Our guest today is the Managing Director of the Institute of International Finance, Dr. Charles Dallara. Dr. Dallara, about a week ago, the finance ministers of the Eurozone approved to further cut the Greek debt and to also release to the government in Athens 44 billion euros in bailout money. Is this action by itself enough to address the immediate concerns of the economic problems of the country and to restart what you often refer to as the economic engines or the engines of economic growth of Greece?
Well, George, first let me say that it's a pleasure to be with you today and to have the opportunity to exchange views on these crucial issues regarding Greece and Europe. I welcome the decisions taken just short days ago in support of Greece. I think that the key there is not so much the further reduction of Greek debt, but the key is the release of funds to support the Greek adjustment program and to support the renewed capitalization of the banks. These decisions are crucial, but it's important to recall that they are predicated on what I think were equally, if not more important decisions by the Greek government in the last few weeks to pass not just one, but two sets of legislation which I think embrace the kind of reforms that are ultimately the key to restoring vitality to the Greek economy.
Dr. Dallara, the government of Greece is currently spending up to 10 billion euros in a bond buyback program, which is designed to help place its debt on a more sustainable level. What do you think of this action and of the calls that are being made by several economic circles for a new restructuring of the Greek debt?
I think that the effort to further reduce the Greek debt through the debt buyback has some benefits for Greece. If it is successfully implemented in the days ahead, it will take Greek debt down another roughly 10% of GDP. This is quite a useful step. However, I must say, George, that were it up to me, I would have been more inclined to use the funds directly to invest in the Greek economy. Today, I believe that the difficulties surrounding Greece have less to do with long-term debt ratios, 7, 8 years off into the future, and more to do with the current lack of investment, job creation, and growth in the Greek economy. So if they had taken that 10 billion euro and put it to work investing and unleashing investment opportunities in Greece, infrastructure, roads, ports, and other projects which have been on the drawing board for some time, but which were initially framed during a period of higher Greek growth, then I think actually the benefits could have come to the Greek economy somewhat earlier.
What is your assessment of the Greek economy based on the findings of your last visits to Athens?
This government is clearly building credibility in moving forward with difficult reforms that I'm convinced will pay dividends for the Greek economy. On the other hand, the continued contraction of the Greek economy, it was announced while I was there, sitting in the Prime Minister's office, that it contracted in the third quarter at an annual rate of over 7%. That kind of contraction cannot be sustained for very long in any democratically elected society. And so my concern is to try to bring forward the bottoming out of this economy as soon as possible and restart the engines of growth. Right now, the current program is predicated on a further 4 to 5% contraction in Greece in 2013, on top of, George, a contraction which almost amounts to 20% over the past few years. Now, I've been involved in sovereign debt problems since I was a young kid, over 35 years ago. And let me tell you, I haven't ever seen a case where the economy has contracted this much over this extended period of time. So we need to do everything. The governments, the Euro governments, the Greek government, and the markets to support early recovery. And I think that Greece can get there, But I think it may require an even greater commitment from the Eurozone for additional funding next year in order to allow the budget targets next year to be stretched once again in order to give a little breathing space for investment in this economy.
Has the Greek economic crisis reached bottom or not yet?
I think we're quite close to it, but I can't honestly say it's reached bottom. But I do see, George, light on the horizon. I see renewed interest on the part of both Greek and foreign businessmen. And I see a steadily rebuilding credibility, not only in the political leadership of Greece, but in the Greek economy. And I think that if the leaders of Europe will continue to back their recent financial decisions with a clear, unequivocal voice, that Greece will remain in the euro, that the skepticism about Greece's future will begin to fade, and this will be restored and returned to a sense of growing confidence.
Dr. Dallara, Greece has been given a 2-year extension to meet the budgetary targets of the bailout program that the European Union and the International Monetary Fund have provided. Yet there appears to be some nervousness in at least some financial circles over Greece's ability to substantially reduce its overspending at a time of negative economic growth. Is this a legitimate concern?
Well, yes and no. I think what is legitimate is concern about Greece being able to continually hit nominal deficit targets at a time of contraction in the economy. I am confident Greece can, and barring unanticipated events, will hit their spending targets. Actually, the problem has not been controlling spending over these last few years. Yes, there was a period of excess leading up to this crisis in 2008, 2009. But since that time, Greece has contracted its government spending by over 12%. Now again, drawing on my vast experience, even with a weak memory today, I can tell you that very few, if any, adjusting economies have been able to contract nominal spending, cyclically adjusted, over 12% over a 2-year period as Greece did. So let's push aside the conventional wisdom that Greece hasn't met spending targets. It has. What Greece has been unable to do is to meet the revenue targets. And there are 2 primary reasons there. One, I have to say, is the rather sluggish approach of Greek governments to strengthening revenue collection. And I think this continues to be a bit of a cloud over Greece's prospects. But the biggest problem underlying the revenue numbers has really been the weak economy. You can't achieve nominal revenue targets if they're premised on higher growth and the growth doesn't materialize. Last year at this time, the IMF, the ECB, and the European Commission all forecast that the Greek economy would contract around 4.8% this year. Right now it's contracting at a rate close to 7%. It has direct and negative effects on revenue, and the Greek government cannot be held accountable for that.
Dr. Dallara, another Eurozone country which is seeking now help with its debt from both European and international sources is the Republic of Cyprus. Yet, up until a few years ago, Cyprus was considered to be one of the strongest economies in Europe. What has gone wrong? And what size of bailout program would Cyprus need to correct the situation?
Without getting into the precise numbers, the scale of support that Europe has to provide for Cyprus is fortunately much smaller than for Greece. A couple of things have happened. I think Cyprus has been adversely affected because the Cypriot banks were large lenders to the Greek government, and they therefore were adversely affected by the restructuring of Greek debt, which we led and agreed to earlier this year. Secondly, of course, there has been a fiscal issue there in Cyprus for the Cypriot government to rein in any fiscal excesses. My understanding is that they have reached agreement at the senior technical levels between the Cypriot government and the Eurozone authorities, the IMF, ECB, and I would urge the Eurozone authorities to move promptly now with their additional commitments to stabilize the Cypriot economy. Fortunately, that economy has not suffered anywhere near as much as the Greek economy has. And I think that Europe has an earlier opportunity to stabilize Cyprus and to turn it around. And that would be in the benefit of everyone.
The fiscal crisis in Greece, as well as the economic problems in Cyprus, Spain, and Italy, could they have a spillover effect in the rest of Europe?
Well, I think they already have, to be honest with you. The entire Eurozone has been affected by the Greek crisis. But if I can put it another way, the Greek economy has been affected by the structural flaws in the entire Eurozone. This is not just a one-way source of contagion. Yes, Greece has had and continues to have serious economic and financial problems, but these did not develop in isolation. They developed over the last decade plus within a framework, well-intended but not perfectly designed, a framework of unified currency and very fragmented fiscal policy. This allowed countries to go off, as we now know, and do their own things. And the markets made some serious mistakes, George, along the way, because they continued to fund Greece as if it were Germany or the Netherlands. And they charged very little in the way of high spreads, and they did insufficient credit risk analysis about the Greek economy. I think, therefore, that although there has been contagion, and there will continue to be contagion from Greece into the entire Eurozone until the debate over Greece's exit from the Euro is finally closed. And I hope we're approaching that day, because I think the voices coming out of Germany today and coming out of most of the Eurozone capitals realize that they're shooting themselves in the foot and hurting their own taxpayers, not just Greek taxpayers. They're hurting their own taxpayers when they continue to openly debate whether Greece should remain part of the Euro, because it increases the need for more financial support for Greece. I think if this debate were brought to an end, and goodness knows that Chancellor Merkel now is in an extremely strong position politically at home. And she is obviously not the only leader of Europe, but she is clearly the most important one. And I think it's time for a unified approach to Greece remaining in the Eurozone. And this in and of itself will give further confidence. Let me say two last things, if I may, George, because I think they're important to the future of the Greek economy. One is, I can't stress enough the importance of Greece moving on structural reforms. And here I am particularly encouraged by the Samaras government and its willingness and determination to move on further labor market reforms, on privatization, on tax reforms, and other areas which have perhaps not been prioritized as much as they should have, either by prior Greek governments or by the Eurozone. Adjustment is not all about fiscal discipline. It's about increasing the underlying efficiency of the Greek economy. This is where the real dividends will, I think, deliver future growth and job creation. And this is where I'm encouraged. I think this government is going to move on privatization. It's going to move on further labor market reforms. And I think that it will be able to build some credibility with the business community here. Secondly, it is time that the leaders of Europe not only turn their attention to Greece's debt, but to investing in the Greek economy. There are over 12 billion in backlogged commitments of investment funds from various Eurozone authorities that need to move. They should give the highest priority to doing what is needed. Let's get real investment going, because this can begin to create jobs by the second half of 2013, and we need to get that unemployment rate down, not only south of 25%, but well south of 20% in order to stabilize the society and the political system there.
Dr. Dallara, thank you very much for spending this time with us.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure being with you, George.
Our guest today has been the International Institute of Finance Managing Director, Dr. Charles Dallara. From all of us at the Voice of America, Good day from Washington.